Lewis Miley has been defended by both Eddie Howe and Joelinton after receiving stick from certain aspects of our fan base. Jonas Gutierrez has taken a huge swipe at Alexander Isak with what went on in the summer. Joelinton is also closing in on a League Cup record for Newcastle United. And do we need to make moves for contract extensions right now to avoid another Isak situation? Let's have a look. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Toon Review. My name's Paul. This is your latest Newcastle United news, and we start off with Lewis Miley, who, of course, came in for some stick for his performance at Bournemouth on Sunday, yet changed all that and had a brilliant game for Newcastle last night. Yes, sloppy passes sometimes. However, overall, a very more attacking performance from Lewis Miley. And Eddie Howe has jumped to the midfielder's defence, as has Joelinton, after received some really stupid criticism after the game at Bournemouth. Now, look, we all speculated that performance at Bournemouth, very defensive from Lewis Miley, was maybe instructional by the manager Eddie Howe, not to push too far forward, maintain your defensive position and not give anything away. And that seems to be what the case was. Now, Joelinton made comments first regarding Miley and said it's always difficult when you see your teammate get stick. Following the Carabao Cup win last night, he said, I have had a difficult time here too. I know how it is. I know the fans are behind the team and a really good young player. He played really well on Sunday, and the team has to get better, and everyone has to look in the mirror and get better. Miley praised Newcastle's amazing travelling support on Sunday, and of course, very proud to make the 50-game milestone for the club at such a young age. However, then Eddie Howe jumped to his defence as well and said, I thought Louis was excellent. This speaking last night, of course. In part, I think he really helped us in the first half. He played some lovely little deft touches and short passes into midfield, using Joe and Bruno as a springboard, really to control that midfield area. He's come back into the team and produced two really good performances back-to-back. I thought he was really good against Bournemouth, listening to the instructions that I gave him before the game started. He stuck to those really well. And it was a very slightly different way tonight. But he's developing his experience all the time, and I'm really pleased with him. So there you go. We speculated that really Lewis Miley's performance on Sunday was down to instructional stuff from Eddie Howe, and it proves that right. It's come from the horse's mouth. Eddie said that he set Lewis Miley up very differently to how he did last night. And you saw the difference in Miley last night by the way he played. You know, Eddie mentioned in the deft little touches in midfield, which was absolutely fantastic. But what I also love about that report is that Joelinton, suddenly, the man who took so much criticism from everybody when he first signed for Newcastle United, saying this guy isn't a striker, he's a waste of 40 million quid, but has turned his career around thanks to Eddie Howe and to Joelinton himself. And he's acting as like a guide and that kind of leader for Miley. You know, he's got that thing about him, Joelinton, where he'll protect the younger players. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. And well done to Joelinton as well for coming out and defending him, because, yes, Joelinton knows what it's like to get criticism from the fans. He lived through it, but he also came through the other end. But I think the criticism that Miley got on Sunday was nothing short of shocking and disgusting, quite honestly, to the point he turned his comments off. I mean, that's got to hurt. He's a young kid. And these plastic idiots who decide to go online and criticize a young kid when all he was doing was what the manager told him to do, and he did it very well. Yes, he was very defensive on Sunday, absolutely, but it was the manager who told him to do that. And when you've got a manager like Eddie Howe, and you listen to what he says more than the fans, you know, he turned backwards and Lewis back past Miley. Well, he certainly wasn't that last night, was he? He was much, much better last night in a forward sense. So he's listening to his manager, and I'm not going to criticize the kid for listening to his manager. Dear me. Now, do Newcastle United need to make moves with contracts? This has been discussed many, many times during the summer, of course. The absolute shit show that was Alexander Isak, wanting to leave, crying his eyes out, big baby attitude, deciding to go on strike and ruin the relationship that he had with Eddie Howe. Completely spoiled it. And Eddie admitted that when he went on strike, the relationship changed. We all know what that means. We don't need much of a brain to know what that means. But now, do Newcastle United look at contracts that are running out in the next 2, 3, 4 years and think, right, we need to do something about this to stop the issue happening again? And there's a good report out this morning that tells us all the players that contracts are running out in 27 and then 28. And I know that to us might seem miles and miles away, but when you're talking about a contract as a footballer, you want to tie your best players down. Now, it turns out that Bruno said no to Manchester City in the summer. Manchester City were told no by Newcastle, but also by Bruno himself. And that just says everything you need to know about Bruno and what Newcastle United means to this guy. He is the pinnacle of buying into a club, captaining a club, and representing the club. He's just fantastic. But now, do we need to turn to the likes of Botman, who looks back to his best now? Yes, I know he's only played a couple of games, but my God, does he look elite? You've got Tonali in the midfield as well. You've got players in that squad who you kind of look at thinking, right, these are the backbone of the players that we need for years to come, and we need them tied down. And then we don't get into a situation with like Alexander Isak where he just thinks, right, I'm going on strike. Fuck him. We can't do that again. And to be honest, the players in the squad that we have at the minute, I don't think would do that. You know, we've got a really good, strong group in there. You know, Anthony Gordon, he's had his criticism for his performances lately. However, all that rigmarole with Liverpool, did it affect him? Yes, it did at the start of last season. However, he didn't kick up a fuss. He didn't whinge. He didn't cry. He didn't go on strike. He just got on with it. And now he's, you know, a big part of the squad. And we know he is. And he will get better. There's no doubt in my mind. We're running games on the left. But we've got to tie these players down. So let me know in the comments who would be the first players that you would turn to try and get long-term contract extensions sorted so that we don't get into this problem again. Now, speaking of Joelinton, he is actually now closing in on a League Cup record for Newcastle United, which I think is absolutely brilliant. This has gone under the radar a little bit because obviously we know Joelinton came from Hoffenheim and he came in as the number 9, and it really didn't work for him. He didn't look like a striker. He struggled in front of goals so many times. But last night he scored his 30th and 31st goal in Newcastle colours. And he found himself now just 1 behind Alan Shearer and 2 behind Shola Amiobi and Andy Cole for League Cup record goals for Newcastle United. So it's crept up on us, hasn't it? I don't think anybody's kept an eye on that, to be honest. But for a guy like Joelinton, who has risen like a phoenix from the flames, we all know the Joelinton story. He's one of my favourite players at the club, and I just think his attitude has been incredible since he's been here. He's bought into the Newcastle United philosophy. He's bought into the fan base, and he loves the club, just like his fellow Brazilian Bruno. But to only be 2 goals away now from equaling the League Cup record goals for Newcastle United players, I think is an incredible achievement. And his 2 goals last night were taken with such class. You know, very, very calm. You look back to Joelinton when he first come to the club, you guarantee he got in that opportunity last night, he'd have fluffed them. But he's come on so much as a footballer. He took those so calmly and comfortably last night. 1 right foot, 1 left foot. And he's just a different player now. And Eddie Howe said, I thought he took his goals brilliantly. That was very much the centre forward in him, calm, composed, and picking the corner. I'm really, really delighted for him. He obviously gives the team a lot more than that. And he does. And obviously, Joelinton has had a bit of a slow start to the season, given that he's had his injuries, etc. But I really do think that he's getting back into the groove now, and certainly is going to be a very pivotal point for us in the midfield, along with Tonali, Bruno, Ramsey, Miley. As the time rolls on this season, we're going to need Joelinton at his very, very best. So only 2 away now from that record. Incredible stuff. Now, who does Eddie Howe go with for centre-back for Arsenal. Obviously, when we do our match preview tomorrow night for the Arsenal game, we will look into that in more detail. But obviously, Dan Burn was left out completely on last night. He was in the stands, rested by Eddie Howe. But then you see Botman and Chow's performance, and you kind of look at that thinking, how can he possibly leave them out? Now, listen, Eddie Howe may well go with 3 centre-backs on Sunday. That's how he normally plays against Arsenal or teams like Arsenal who will jump on you very, very quickly. So, in theory, Eddie would possibly go with Burn, Botman and Chow. But I just think the way Chow and Botman seem to have this partnership evolving already, it's going to be very, very hard. And I think when the season started, we all looked at Chow and Botman and thought, right, there's a reason he brought Malik Chow in. He was a little bit rocky against Liverpool, but has been absolutely brilliant since he's sort of started games or come on against Barcelona. He was excellent, but he's looked really solid. And Botman has just looked like his Rolls-Royce self in the last couple of games. He's been exceptional. So how do you leave them out in any capacity when we go back to 4 at the back? Yes, maybe the Carabao Cup, he sort of rotates a little bit, but you're looking at the Champions League. You want your very best players in the Champions League. And for me, I know it's a little bit harsh on Dan Burn, absolutely. But Dan Burn's at an age now where I think maybe he doesn't expect to be in the team every week. But Chow and Botman have got to be our centre-backs moving forward, surely. Surely they are number 1 and 2 on the team sheet for centre-backs. That's my opinion. Let me know yours because, they just ooze class right now. They are brilliant to watch. Now, finally, Jonas Gutierrez, a hero at Newcastle United. Not necessarily the greatest player we've ever had, but certainly a cult hero with what he had to go through when he was at Newcastle United. The cancer issue and all the Mike Ashley crap that he had to put up with. And saving us from relegation with a goal, I think we'll never forget. Now, he's taken a swipe at Alexander Isak. And to be honest, it's not really a nasty swipe, but he's just mentioning that Newcastle United are bigger than any player. And he was disappointed with the way Alexander Isak behaved over the summer. And I think it's good that ex-players do speak out as well because obviously, Newcastle meant an awful lot to Gutierrez. And, he meant an awful lot to us with what he went through. And I think it's fantastic to hear him speak out on the situation. Now, he's talking to NBC. And he said, Eddie Howe is doing an amazing job for the club. When you have a player who does not want to be in the place, the best thing is to let him go. I've been in Newcastle. I wanted to be there. And I enjoyed the city and the fans. But you can have some players who don't want to. If the decision of a player, I'm not going to have the same reaction as he had if I wanted to leave because it's not good for the fans or the city. But it's his decision. I do wish him the best, but Newcastle is bigger than any player. So he's basically been very, I guess, very calm about the situation. You can see that Gutierrez is very, very angry and disappointed with the way Isak behaved because Gutierrez, Newcastle means an awful lot to him, as it does a lot of former players, and they don't want to see players treating the club with such disrespect. And I think he worded it brilliantly. Because he's not really he's not being nasty to him, but he's just saying it's not good for the fans. It's not good for the city. It's not very good for Eddie Howe and the club. Absolutely. So the best decision is that he's got to go if he doesn't want to be there, but it's how you conduct yourself. And I'm sure, look, we all know that players want to achieve things and win things. If Alexander Isak had just not gone on strike and he'd continued to play for Newcastle, knowing in the background there was a possible move to Liverpool happening, just get the early games out the way, possibly would have got some points for Newcastle. We wouldn't look at him, yes, we'd be pissed he'd left, but we wouldn't look at him in the same way we do now after he'd gone on strike and destroyed any relationship he had with the club and the manager. So I'm really pleased that Jonas has spoken out because I think it's fantastic that we get a former player who loves the club coming and defending the club because we get so much shit in the press that it's just so nice to hear a player come out and tell you exactly what he thinks. So there you go, guys. That is the latest news. As usual, let me know in the comments below what you think. We're back tonight at 7 o'clock, me and Billy, with a review of last night's game and the player ratings. And also, we're going to bring a few of you guys on as well, like a little mini fan forum to get your thoughts on last night and, of course, the huge game with Arsenal on Sunday. But please leave a comment as per usual. Leave a like and please do subscribe if you're new to the channel, and we'll see you very soon. Take care.